Brought to you by Dale Carnegie of Orange County, this is the 411 on Leadership podcast, where we discuss common sense leadership practices with executives in Southern California to transform you into the leader people want to follow. Welcome to the 411 on Leadership podcast. My name is Steve Thomas, and to my left is John Campbell. We're having all sorts of fun this morning, so apologize for a little bit of the late start, but we're glad to be with you. John, how's everything going, sir?
Everything's good. Having way too much fun. Right? Way too much fun.
It's your microphone.
Hey, it's a fun times, man. We are good. Hopefully you guys are doing good. Had a fantastic weekend yourself?
Oh, weekend was
chill.
Pretty good. Not doing anything too much, and so we definitely enjoyed it. By the way, we're here talking inclusive leadership. Inclusive leaders are self-aware, and we're so excited to have this guest come and join us. But before we do, this podcast is brought to you by Sitch Radio. Talk to our producer, Brian. Brian makes all things happen. If you're looking into starting your very own podcast and telling your story and also telling the story of others, I really encourage you to start your podcast. And while you're at it, talk to our producer, Brian, at sitchradio.com. sitchradio.com. And as we're going through this podcast, John, what are we encouraging participants to do?
Well, we'd love for you to comment. We want to hear from you. You help make the show. You put your questions in. We'll talk about them. We'll try to see if we can get answers to you on air. If you're watching this later at some other time, please feel free to still comment. We'll come back in and reply to those. Make sure that you like and subscribe. We'd love to have you a part of our leadership discussion going forward. We want you here. This is a team effort.
For sure. Well, without any further ado, we're so excited to have Charles Antis. He is the CEO, founder of Antis Roofing and Waterproofing. Also, he's a humanitarian. I mean, he's involved in so many things, and I feel like if we were to spend the next 15 minutes, that it wouldn't cover everything that Charles is doing. So actually, we're going to be asking Charles to come back and help us do like a time management type podcast, with everything that he's doing. But Charles, if you know Charles, and if you're in the Orange County area, he is a well-respected humanitarian with projects with Habitat for Humanity. He's on several different executive boards, including Cal State Fullerton, and just an all-around humble and good guy from the time that we've had a chance to connect. And so we want to take the opportunity and welcome Charles. Charles, how you doing this morning, my friend?
Thank you. That an awesome introduction. I'm doing really good now. Thanks, Steve. John, I'm super excited to be here.
No, we are excited to have you. And we have to say this for Antis Roofing and Waterproofing. They are celebrating, or they have celebrated 30 years in the business back in 2019, and so really enjoying the logo on your shirt, where every nail matters, and trust me, they are making it count. So Charles, if you won't mind just sharing with us and those that are listening and watching right now, tell us a little about your leadership journey and why is it you're so passionate about pouring yourself into these humanitarian efforts.
Well, gosh, I guess because I can, because I know I can. And it started with the topic of, knowing who we are, having an inclusive leadership style. And so when you talk about, when you were talking, I'm thinking about, gosh, what do I know about who I am? I know a lot about who I am compared to what I used to know about who I am. And so when I'm hearing that, I'm thinking like, and your audience, some of us know more about ourselves than we used to. But if we're just framing ourselves by who we are, by what we learned when we were little, by our parents, our church, our state, our religion, our color of our skin, then we don't know who we are. And so this is the first thing I'd say. You're an animal in the jungle. You're going to survive one of four ways. Tell me how you're going to survive. This is the quick way to a disc analysis. I'm comparing it to an animal in a jungle. So I'm going to give it to you. So Steve and John, you're an animal in a jungle. You're either going to be dominant like a lion, a D on a disc scale, or you're going to be popular like a Cocker Spaniel. Everyone likes me. They won't kill me. You're going to be S, middle of the pack like a gazelle. If I stay in the middle of the pack, I won't be killed. Or you're going to be sly like a fox. You're only going to travel at dusk or at dawn, the C. And so if you're an animal in the jungle, how do you survive? I'm asking you.
Ooh, wow. If you put it to me, I'll let you go first.
Well, I see how there's a deflection. So I would probably be the one in the pack.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
okay.
And that suits what you, middle of the pack. You're aware of everybody. That's why you're talking about inclusivity.
Right.
Both of you. I also bet because you're in the show, you're like me, you're also going to feel the need somehow inside you that everyone likes you. You know, so you're probably very similar to me, that you're here and not the accountant doing the books in the back. You know, Brian, who's producing this show, is probably a little more like the fox. He's going to make sure that microphone works, right?
That's
So,
right.
the first thing that I say where I'm really lucky, that gives me a great platform to lead from, is I'm self-aware, because I look at every analysis, like I just gave you, as hacked as that was. I look at that as a valuable way to compare myself to how I used to see myself and how the stories today match up with the stories of old. And wow, then we can lead. But now we'll get to service. Sorry.
No, you're fine. And so I want to answer your question too.
Wait, no, you can't avoid it.
Well, no,
what's
you
yours?
asked me
All right,
first.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not gonna say I can't.
Let's go. Let's go. Come on.
Yeah.
What's your answer?
No, I will. No, definitely. I would say also middle, because I'm more of the S. If we talk about the disc personality, more of the S, so more of the middle of the pack. But I also see them as not just middle, just to like just remain in the middle and just kind of keep ourselves, but one, to make sure everybody's good and we're all tracking in the same direction and we're all moving forward. And so
thank you.
I think that is key, and I think that that's important, that everybody that you mentioned, everybody has a role to play. And I think that once you are aware of that, then it just makes you more effective, not only as somebody who's leading their teams, but somebody who's with their team.
I would venture to say, not an expert, but a guy who's directionally correct often with the stories I tell. That S is the most critical factor to nurture and support team. So when I was a higher D, when I tested 15 years ago on that DISC scale, my D was so high, my S was lower. You know, that shifts sometimes. I wasn't as kind to my team. I didn't know it, but I was scared until I started lifting my team as a way to be heard, lifting my team as a way to lead, lifting my team as a way to nurture. And then I noticed I tested higher on the DISC, where my S went up, and I was very happy about that. So, but service, why do I serve? You know, service is something that is in me. I believe it's in all of us, but I think it's not pure until you get there for somewhat of an authentic reason. And so forgiving for me started because Dad said so, because my church said so when I was little, because I thought I'd get struck by lightning if I didn't, you know? So when I started my company, giving was that much like that. I found myself struck with a condition when I started my company very early on. When I needed every job to survive, I was still struck with a condition where I couldn't let a family have a leaky roof just because they didn't have the money to pay. And I should probably tell this one story because it really tells that probably better than anything. And it's a story of that I didn't plan on. I was just, you know, started my company. I needed every job to survive. I needed the jobs so bad that I put weather stripping on the home bedroom I'd converted into an office. So if somebody called, they wouldn't hear my daughter. And so under that condition, I get a couple calls a week. And I got a call one day 32 years ago from a lady, and she had leaks in every room. So that's like, yes, I'm going to make money. I'm driving out there the next day. But as I'm getting closer to the house, I noticed the homes are getting smaller, more disheveled, until I turned left where that's on that street where the home would be. And I look back and I don't even see a home at first until I get around the house next to it. And I just see this dead grass with this small box home set back. And I'm like, oh, I hope it's not it. It's got one of those 140 and a half numbers hanging on it. So I kind of go up and knock, hoping it's another home. And then three things happened that shifted me on this course, where this lady answers the door, maybe 50. And she's just had this tired expression, like she's had a really bad month. And I'm gathering what I'm going to say, but before I can say anything, the second impression hits me. It's a smell of mildew that's so powerful, it nearly knocks me down. And then I'm just like, I have this fight or flight mentality. I remember I'm trying to leave, but still wondering what I'm going to say. And at that exact moment, as I'm pulling away, I feel this tug at my finger. And I look down, and there's a little girl, and she's about 6. She's got blonde hair. She's got a big smile, and she doesn't see the smile, my frown or the mom's frown. She just pulls me in because, like, looking back now, she had a visitor in her home, and it probably wasn't happening then. And she pulls me through this crowded living room into an undersized hallway cutout. And then she pulls right into this room. And I knew it was her room because she immediately smiled as she pointed to a My Little Pony poster on the wall. But at that exact time, I looked down, and I saw not one, but 4 mattresses with mold on them. And so that was that moment. that I'll never forget. That I never told that story until about 10 years ago, because it was very personal. It didn't feel like a story that I should tell until I did. Until it was. But it was important because that moment, I was frozen. I couldn't help that little girl. I was touched, but I thought, why am I here? You know, it didn't hit me like a beautiful thing. Then it hit me like, oh my God, this is not what I thought. I have to leave. I have to go support. I have a mortgage payment to make in 2 weeks. But something happened when the mom walked back in the room, and I shifted again from that little girl's smile to that frown on her face. Before I could stop them, words came out of my mouth that I'd never uttered before. And I looked at her and I said, I'm going to take care of your roof. And I gasped, I remember, because I just wanted to, maybe, because I wondered, I remember the feeling, I thought I might have just told a lie, because I didn't know if I could. And I went up on the roof. I was praying. It was like a hole, but no, the roof was gone. It was just plywood showing through it. And so I was concerned, but that was what I call today my doctor on an airplane moment. Not knowing the value, what it would bring to my company. It was what I had to do in that moment. What does a doctor do when that doctor's on an airplane? He or she hears that call from the pilot. You know, this is a medical emergency. We believe, and I believe most of the time, that he or she, that doctor, answers that call and says yes and delivers that service, not thinking once of sending a bill. And so that was my doctor on an airplane moment. And I held it tight. I didn't tell anybody. And then it happened again, and it happened again. And I found myself struck with a condition that's very important, I think, to hear. I couldn't let a family have a leaky roof just because they didn't have the money to pay. And that became a quiet thing here. And so we did quiet repairs. And then something happened along the way where somebody asked us to donate a roof for Habitat for Humanity. And I'd like to break into that story. There's a reason I want to tell it more. But this person that connected me to Habitat for Humanity for 2 years nudged me to get there. And I finally said yes, and we donated that first roof. And that's when we learned to tell the story, because it didn't lift our team when they didn't know why I did it. I didn't tell the moldy mattress story of that little girl that we helped that stayed in their home until 20 years later. But when my team understood why we donated to Habitat roofs, it mattered. When I understood why they donate to American Cancer Society because of their aunt or somebody, then I understand them more. And when we understand and know each other's stories, then we can believe. In fact, if somebody's a little cranky with me, I don't really know them, and they're in accounting, and I don't know them all these years, and then I find out that their aunt, like my aunt, had cancer, and then that they survived, and all of a sudden I know them. I get them. I get why they're built the way they are. And suddenly I find I love them. And so what service does is it lets us find out who we really are. My team knows who I really am. Your audience, when this show's done, they're going to know who I really am, because I'm able to show up with full intent, fully disclose with who I am, being able to be vulnerable and authentic in the moment. And that is a practice that we practice here at Antis Roofing.
You know, there's so many good things about that. And I think one of the ones that I got even out of the disc element, but you expressed it with the story in this one, is the idea of there's the team element, and we're not all created the same. And if we all were the same on the team, actually we'd probably be dysfunctional. But we need the strong D, we need the S, we need the person that's off, quietly taking care of stuff. And as a leader, a lot of times we see a lot of those strong Ds rise to the top, right? Because they're driven, they're motivated. You talked about earlier on their career, they go for it. And a lot of times, and you see this in coaches too, a lot of times I've noticed just on my own analysis that sometimes the best players, those class A number one players, don't always make the best coach, because not everybody on the team plays to the level that they did. You know?
So you're so true. That's me. You're describing me. I mean, I was not a good manager, but I expected myself to be a good manager because I'm thinking I'm comparing myself to you. When I compare myself to you, Steve, you're going to be more cool than me one time. I can compare myself to you, John. You're going to be more strong than me in one way. And it's a really messed up way to be, because I don't think there's 4 styles. I think there's 1,000 styles. We're uniquely ourselves. And that's why testing's so important. That's why DISC is so important. It gives you a certain view of yourself. Well, I'll be damned.
Yeah.
Huh.
Right.
I was embarrassed my whole life that I wanted to be the center of attention until I read my disc and I said, well, I'll be damned. I'm designed that way.
Mm.
And now I know how to leverage it. And I know why. Because if I share the story well, then you can do it too. And then I have impact. So I love that. You nailed it. We are entirely different. So as a team, it's important to invest in who your people are, especially when the world is changing more than it's ever changed in our lifetimes, exponentially changing, exponential change upon exponential change. What a good time to know who we are and what fulfills us.
We're talking with Charles Antis. He is the CEO of Antis Roofing and Waterproofing. And just to recognize a couple of comments, thanks so much, Susmitha, for your comments in the chat. And one of the things that she mentioned is that tangible celebrations do emphasize intangible victories. And so she's just recognizing that great example that you gave earlier, Charles.
Can I say, Susmitha, I know you, and I love
she's great, isn't she? Because I know her as well. She's excellent.
Can I just say what Susmitha told me, a beautiful story that lifted my company? She just on a post a couple weeks ago said, you know what? You talk about your VP, Susan DeGrassi, who's our VP of cause and over admin. And she goes, you know, I ran into her a dozen years ago or so. I don't remember exact time, but she was having a career change. And she said, Susan took her lunch and set up all these options for her. And now she's in a whole new field. She's thriving. And she gave me an indirect thank you that I was able to give Susan DeGrassi. And what a beautiful day that was. So thank you, Susmitha. Thank you for being one that believes we're all connected and that everything matters.
Awesome. And if you have comments or if you have questions, go ahead and please post them. If you're liking this content, give us a like as well. We want to make sure that we address them as we get them. So Charles, you know, in talking about inclusive leadership, I've heard, generally speaking, as it relates to CEOs, is like, okay, well, you know what, my HR is taking care of that. So, you know, that's not really a priority for me right now. And so if you can speak to us and to those that are listening, why should CEOs prioritize this idea of inclusive leadership?
Well, there's a lot of layers to that. I'll try to speak to some of it. Inclusivity in leadership, inclusive leadership, inclusivity in language. There's a lot of ways I could dive into sections of that. But inclusivity, to me, when I started my company, when I was a roofing craftsman who wanted to sell roofs, I mean, it didn't mean I was afraid. I was afraid of people being different because it felt like it lowered productivity. I didn't understand that national data point that says when you bring inclusivity in your workplace, when somebody's different than you, when somebody has a different skin color from a different country, when someone has different preferences than you, then it makes you stronger. Well, it's hard to believe until you experience it, you know, but it's true. We experience it. So it's also the right thing to do. And when you get down to intent, like my dad taught me something, and I say my dad, my parents taught me something, you know, my culture, religion, everything, it taught me something. It taught me something, whether I wanted to or not, to do the right thing. Well, what's the right thing? It's not, well, the right thing, because people are so different, like we already established, it's not black or white. The right thing is very, very layered. And so that's where I just did that thing where I forgot what the original question was.
This the question is like, why should CEOs care about that? Because, you know, we've been, you know, we've saying, hey, you know what, my HR team is taking care of that, or my department, they're the ones
that's making sure it's at first. See, that burns
you know,
me when you say that, because when you say that, it's down to intent. If your intent is that your HR team is taking care of it, then you're not going to be in business a lot longer, because it has to be really, your intent has to be, it has to get to that point where we can build bridges all the way to everybody, no matter what. It has to get there. And there's a lot of layers to how you do that. You do it by hiring people that are different, by seeing it as an advantage to hire people that are different. Like the females in roofing have always been there, but now there's national women in roofing. We're drawing attention to the females in roofing, and we're going, oh, wow, because we have males and females in roofing, we're so strong together, but we've got to draw attention to it to get people there. I wanted to bring up a certain part of that, but I keep losing it. It's intentionality in your language. If you want to be more intentional, I'm going to give you a tool to use. It sounds silly to some, and to Susmitha and to many others, she'll totally get it. You'll totally get it. And that is that everything you say matters. Every word that comes out of your mouth, every gesture, every smile, whether you don't smile or not, everything matters. And so I'm going to give you a comparison that I learned through my wife. My wife, Dawn Antis, is very inclusive. She's very kind. And she teaches me things by how she acts and treats others, how generous she is, but also in her language. Right after we were engaged, she said this thing to me that I thought sounded familiar. She said, everything happens for a reason. And we believe that. And I said, yeah. And then one day I said to her, nothing happens by accident. And I said, isn't that the same thing you always say? Everything happens for a reason. She goes, no, it's not the same. And to me, I didn't get it. This is 7 years ago. But after being around somebody who only sees things positively, who only says things positively, who only lifts people up, I realized that. And when I'm reading about our emotional brain, the EQ brain, when you hear me tell you, nothing happens by accident, you don't cognitively believe that and conjure that up and go, oh yeah. What you do is you hear nothing. You hear accident thrown at you. And that's just the way EQ works. It takes a while to catch up to it. It does. It takes a while to believe that. But when you say everything, reason, positive words. So the rule is this, and everything that you say, you only say it positively. I catch myself saying things sometimes where I could say it more positively. And so I constantly work on it. Sometimes the messaging just seems so clean to use those other words. But if all of your messaging that comes out of your mouth, live or in print, from your company, only says things in positive waves, then that is building inclusivity in your language. It also starts to build inclusivity in your actions. The more you speak toward it, the more kind you are. The more you speak to connectivity and love, the more you're connected and more people can feel you and people can feel your presence. I don't know. I really don't know how that works. But when your intent shows up right, when you decide that maybe I can, when you say maybe I can, everything shifts. Thoughts become words, becomes things that are written down, becomes actions, become things that are built. Intent is a powerful thing.
It absolutely is. And I think intentionality starts with you keyed on it earlier, Steve, and we'll have to bring you back, is time management, because some of the stuff you have to plan for. It doesn't just happen accidentally. Go, oh, if I think about doing it this way, I'll eventually get to it. No, you got to plan on it, and you have to start using the language like you said.
Well, I like that. And so I think that there's different types. So everybody's different.
Right.
And I have planners all around me. There's something that I would speak to, a certain type of visionary leadership. If you're a visionary leader, then there's a way that I plan by not planning. Now, I'm not saying some of this is a cop-out, right? No. But I plan by convincing myself that I am capacity, that my company is capacity to say yes to gives, that I am capacity is one way to say that I can say yes to whatever comes. And so I prepare myself in a sense by being unprepared in some sense, where I can go into a meeting and hear something and say yes maybe, instead of saying no, it's impossible because I'm slammed and too busy because I'm completely planned out. Okay. So I have people around me that plan and plot, but my job is to be capacity, is to be that open awareness, to pause on this and to pause on this, to create the first part of curiosity change that can get there. That's kind of how I hold it. But I think you're right.
Well, but you've planned that into your self-awareness.
Yes.
You've been intentional about that, knowing that you've had the ability to put your team around you to allow that to happen, which is fantastic. And we've had some comment. In fact, Sue Smith has said thank you. She appreciated you saying that. And we know Cecile mentioned here that everything matters, what you say and how you act. So thank you, Cecile, for sharing that with us. Somebody has a fan out there.
We're talking with Charles Antis. He is the CEO of Antis Roofing and Waterproofing. And please, if you have any questions, we'd love to hear from you in the remaining time that we have. As a matter of fact, we did have a question that came in from Cheyenne, who mentions, how would you handle someone on your team that is negative if you yourself are positive? And she just goes on to mention sometimes she feels like it's inappropriate to be positive if someone is upset or negative. So Charles, how would you respond to that?
That's a great question. Thank you. I think my answer to that is, for me, again, my personality type, but I think it's a challenge for all leaders to consider, is to never address it. So there's something that I learned somewhere from a Vistage coach, Beth Atkinson, I think along the way, like 10 years ago. I wrote it down: always assume positive intent. Well, if I'm always assuming positive intent, then it's impossible for me to address that. I'm going to couple that with something Jen Sincero wrote in her book. That's a fantastic book called You Are a Badass. And if you read it, you'll realize you are a badass. But she said, you know, that time when somebody did you wrong, disrespected you, or didn't complete it, you know, that time you got to go tell them, how and when do you do it? I remember I couldn't turn the page. And this is a mindset person. And she said, you never tell them. Wow, what a concept. You only tell them when they're doing something good. Now, I've been experiencing coaching my 7-year-old in baseball. And man, if I start, hey, choke up on the bat, anything, if I just say good swing, have fun, man, it's so true. And so if you get ahead with enough positivity, I find that in my leadership, I don't need to point out. And I really don't. So if I get scared about something, I say it so little anymore that my team probably does listen. But my rule for myself is I don't bring it up. I always assume positive intent. And I've got to tell you this, for the most part, I haven't had to navigate anything difficult. But looking back, after people have gone have pointed out there's been saboteurs in the midst, and
Sure.
But I've learned along the way from very strong counsel. Just pretend it's not there. Don't acknowledge it. Literally thank them for what they're bringing and bringing good in the business. And if you do that, then what happens is those people become scrapers. And it's a term I don't know if it's going to stick, but I just thought of it the other day. Scrapers are somebody that when you pretend it's not there, it creates a little bit of uncomfortableness and they'll self-off out. When they self-off out, they become a scraper. They'll take their dyad with them. They'll try to take somebody with them, but it won't be the person probably that you need in the team. So my point is people aren't as big of a threat as you think, because things are not playing out in that real. Emotional intelligence says, gosh, I'm probably going to have a place to sleep tonight. I'm probably going to have food on the table. I'm probably not going to be looking to go to jail. My family's going to have a place to sleep. And yet we worry as if our lives are threatened over little things at work. And I've learned to take these things down and literally pretend as if they don't matter and only notice the things that matter. And holding it like that has transformed our business and our culture.
You mentioned stepping ahead in terms of positivity. I remember, one of Dale Carnegie's principles is like arousing the other person an eager want. So when we talk about intentionality, it's during some of those times where we're having conversations with somebody who may be negative or positive as well, and just really see what's underneath the surface and what's driving them and motivating them. Now, obviously, we're not encouraging in the middle of the day that you have a counseling session, for about an hour or so. But again, it's taking a little bit of time and just a little bit of just finding out, hey, you know what is it that what is that thing that's really driving that person? What is that they're really caring about? What is that thing that's causing some of that negativity? And that's not to say that we would be able to do something about it all the time, but I think that it adds to that inclusive leadership in the sense that, okay, well, what? I feel like, Charles is at least, listening to what I'm saying. And I feel like I'm getting my voice and I feel like I'm heard. Not to say we're going to solve the problem.
Right. That's how it would happen in our company. You're right. I would take that to our over HR, Susan DeGrassi, and then she would say what you said. And I would go, oh yeah. But you see, I don't always notice that. But I'll ignore the challenge. I might bring up to my HR person, is there a challenge here? And then she might say yes, and I'm going to address it for that reason, because they need to be lifted up. They're not feeling heard. But my job as the visionary leader is to spin them positively, and it just works better for me. I wanted to bring something up. We talk about all this, how it happens, and how we do all this, and I got to tell you, it always with intention, and it's always with maybe, because as you guys mentioned when we got here, we have a blood drive going today, so we have the radio station here, we have Antis Roofing, and then we have about 15 to 30% of the space, my math failed me, 30% of the space is doing a blood drive. And it's our 42nd. We're going to do our 43rd and our 44th this week.
That's incredible.
Which is really powerful. But I want to mention that we have a lot of this. We were at Camp Ronald McDonald House commemorating 2 weeks ago the National Give, where we've got the roofing industry and Ronald McDonald's House holding hands to keep families safe and dry. But what I want to mention is what's happening this Friday. And I want to mention it in honor of the person who made me this mug. Greg Wise is a friend of mine that I just found out last night passed. And Greg Wise is my mentor who brought me to our first Habitat for Humanity board position, my first ever act of service in a formalized way. And he made this mug for me, and I want to tell you what it says. It says, every act of love will set you free. He was also a master potter besides running a paper company. But the reason I want to mention him is Greg knew that I gave away roofs, and he knew I couldn't let a family have a leaky roof just because they didn't have the money to pay. But he knows I didn't tell anybody that story. We were really close friends. And Greg said to me, I'm a big part of Habitat. I believe in their mission that every family deserves a decent place to live. And I said, yeah, okay, but I don't really want to donate a roof. I don't want no one to know about it. For 2 years, he bugged me to donate a roof. I said, no, I can't. And finally, about 11 years ago, I said, okay, I'll donate a roof. And he arranged me to talk to Sharon Ellis, the CEO of Habitat. And we've donated every roof since. And this Friday, we're going to drive the 500,000th nail on the 137,000 tile on the $1.2 million in roofing over the 85th family's home that we've housed. And we're going to drive that nail in, and we're going to have Eagle Tile, who's donated all the tile. Kevin Burlingame's going to be there. I'm going to be there. Shellen Arrows is going to be there. And I'm going to invite Greg's family to be there because this is a very important moment. And because of people like him that believe everything matters and every act will set you free, he gave me a gift. He gave me the gift to talk about the good that we're doing, that I could build and attract the right talent, that we could go out and build roofs that last, that we could go out and lift our entire industry, all because of this guy and what he saw. And he did this everywhere he went. And I just want to honor Greg Wise and thank him for his years of friendship. And, if you read anything about Greg Wise, all you read is what he's done to lift everything he's touched everywhere he's went his entire life. And so I just want to thank him on behalf of all of us at Ansys Roofing and representing the Roofing Alliance, the National GIVE, the National Roofing Contractors Association. We thank him for the idea that we could keep all the families safe and dry in all the Ronald McDonald houses across the world. So he's had a huge impact. And thank you for letting me talk about that.
Yeah, thank you for sharing.
Every act of love will set you free. Cheers to Greg Wise.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And
cheers.
Man, Steve, this has been one of the fastest 30 minutes we've had. Charles, man, we really appreciate you coming and talking with us. How can those leaders who are listening today, for one thing, if they want to talk to you about roof, where do they go to hear about roofing? And then if you want to get them involved in something, where should they go to get connected and start maybe applying some of those same things?
Thank you for asking. First of all, yes, if you have an HOA, if you live in a homeowner association between Malibu and San Diego, please call Ansys. We will keep you safe and dry. I promise you, we will give you the best value. Your roof will last to full warranty with us. And that's not something you hear out there because who did your last roof? Where is he? There you go. That's it. But if you want to get involved, I love this. I get to be that guy that asks all the time. I go up on a roof and I say, who wants to get involved? And people call and I love it. But call me. Contact me on my LinkedIn. Follow me on LinkedIn. Look up Charles Antis on LinkedIn. That's the only social network that I'm active on. My team's active on everything. But yeah, call me and I will plug you in. I promise you, I will give you an opportunity. If you're a contractor, I will give you an opportunity to give. I've donated every Habitat roof for the last 11 years, but I'm ready to share that. Talk to me. I'll share it with you. So we'll do it together.
Charles, thank you so much again for joining us. We did have a couple more comments and questions. Hopefully we'll get to address those offline. But thank you for those that are participating via your chats and your comments. Also, if you'd like a team to work alongside of you to, again, not only build that self-awareness in your leaders, but equip your leaders to lead their teams effectively, especially during this challenging and changing times, please feel free to reach out to us at dalecarnegie.com. We are located in Orange County, and we want to partner with you and your team to help you to reach your goals as an organization. And we're more than willing and happy to do that. For additional resources, and I'm fidgeting with my mic, for additional resources, feel free to visit our show notes. That will give you plenty of additional resources as well.
And you got all the testing. You got DISC, you got Myers-Briggs, you got EQ, emotional intelligence.
Yes.
You can hook everybody up and everybody can know who they are, how they're going to survive in the world.
Exactly.
Love that.
Exactly. John, you want to wrap this up? Thanks so much, Charles.
Yeah, thank you for hanging out with us today. Again, please make sure you comment, you add to the conversation, and we'll get back to that. Join us next week once again as we have the 411 on leadership. Have a fantastic week.